Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching at Home Comic Con. This is such a cool event. Thank you so much, especially to Owen, for setting everything up with Team Valiant over here. And this is all going towards such a great cause. Before I introduce the two guests, obviously, please consider making a donation to Project Hope. It is a nonprofit organization that helps healthcare efforts around the globe. If you do want to donate, there is a donation link pinned to the live chat as well as in the stream description. And fun fact, everyone who donates is automatically entered for a giveaway for this panel. And what we are giving away is a super rare Ninjak variant cover. It is the Ninjak 1 in 100 Prisma class variant. These are incredibly rare and it features artwork by Javier Polito. So if you do enter, you have a chance to win that. And I wish you the best of luck and thank you for donating, of course. But let's move on to the Hive Mind. These guys are behind the brilliant comics, such as the upcoming Valiant series, The Harbinger. Of course, when they're spending some time with Terry McGinnis over in Batman Urban Legends, and then the upcoming series, Batman Beyond, Neo Year, as well as the series right now over at Marvel, Kang the Conqueror. Jackson and Colin, thank you so much for taking time this morning to chat with us. How are you guys doing?
Doing great, man. Yeah, really. I mean, you say the words Batman, Kang, and Harbinger back to back to back, and it's hard to not be doing well. Like it's an exciting time.
How does that feel? Like you guys are playing in so many sandboxes. Like I know you guys grew up really into this stuff as well, and now you get to play around in the Valiant universe, the Marvel universe, the DC future universe, and all the different eras of Marvel. Really, that's got to be surreal, guys. What's that like?
It's absolutely wild. As you said, we kind of grew up loving this stuff, as I think probably a lot of people watching did as well. We got into writing effectively because it was only our only way to tell stories, and we're addicted to telling stories. And the fact that we kind of got to take a step by step, starting with Hacktivist over at Boom, and then doing our creator-owned book Joyride, and slowly kind of crawling over to DC, doing Batman and Robin Eternal. I'll tell you, the rush of getting for the first time to write Batman jumps through the window, and the window shatters like a bat. From there, effectively, every time we've got to step into the pilot seat for one of these amazing characters, we kind of have to pinch ourselves. Because these are the characters that we grew up loving, and now we're being trusted to take the reins of where their stories get to go. It's an incredible honor and an incredible privilege, and I won't lie, it's rad as hell.
We also have sort of a full circle aspect to this, because Colin and I met in college. We met when we were both in our late teens, early 20s, and we were at college, and we used to have to go from the campus to our local comic book shop every Wednesday to get our comics. I was getting my comics delivered by Midtown Comics to my dorm, because I didn't have a car, and I didn't know where to get comics in LA. And our mutual friend David Server was like, hey, we all go to Golden Apple, you should come to Golden Apple. And so we would pile into his PT Cruiser, which roared so loud that we called it the Beast, and we went and we got comics every Wednesday. And it was there were four of us, and Colin and I were, basically that was how we became friends. Was we used to go to this comic book shop together and get our comics, and then go get pizza next door at either Midtown, at Meltdown, or at Golden Apple, or at both, depending on what stock, who had what books. And then we would hang out and argue about comics. And a lot of those comics, in retrospect, are now comics or are characters that we are getting to work on. We would go back to Dave's apartment and watch Batman Beyond. We would go, when we were there, Young Avengers, the first run was coming out, which featured Nate Richards and Iron Lad. So our mutual love for Kang the Conqueror really grew at exactly that time that our friendship grew. So we've gotten this wild opportunity to, after a bunch of years trying to kind of get our hands on some of these iconic toys to play around, we happen to get the ones that mean the most to us. And in Kang, that's very, I guess, intentional. We really went after that. And with Batman Beyond, it was a sort of a synergy thing where our editor had the right idea at the right time. And then our fandom has grown over the course of that. as Harbinger relaunched, we had the similar thing where we both became really, really hardcore Harbinger fans. We became big Valiant fans in general and started to try to bang down that door, never with the thinking that Harbinger would be the one that we would get in on. We sort of assumed we'd do a one shot here or like a 4-issue run on some weird new character. Like we pitched so many oddball things to Valiant over the years, thinking that that's kind of how we would get in. And, you know, the biggest book we might do is like a Geomancer book or something. And then here you are, you know, setting up an ongoing new status quo for Peter Stanchik. Like, that's wild. That's, if you told us that 4 years ago, we would not know what to do with ourselves. Like, it's wild. So add that to the, you know, we get to play in all 3 sandboxes at once. It's a very privileged and very lucky and very like unique position that we're not taking for granted. We're really just sucking every bit of joy out of this thing, man. It's really exciting.
So I have to ask, because all the people watching live right now, you know, there's probably a good mix of people who, you know, are tuned into the Valiant universe. They've been following Peter Stanchik since maybe even the 90s, maybe since the 2012 run. And there's a mix of people who are here to, you know, learn more about Batman Beyond and Kang and the other work you guys have done. So when it comes to Harbinger, first and foremost, what is it about your upcoming Harbinger series, which, by the way, the Harbinger #1 is available for pre-order now, and it goes on sale October 27th. What is it about that series that you think would really speak to people who like Batman Beyond and what you guys are doing over in Kang the Conqueror?
I mean, both books, all 3 books, have a sort of surprising amount in common insofar as they are really dealing with, at their core, a similar, different aspects of the same fundamental question, which is, what does it mean to be a young person in a world that seems very stacked against you? What does it mean to be a person with any kind of privilege and responsibility, i.e. in all 3 cases, right? Effectively a man in a relatively real world, dealing with being an insurgent and trying to speak outside of your experience or speak in solidarity with people who don't live in your experience, who live more difficult experiences than you. And live more marginalized experiences than you. Kang is a sort of villainous reflection of that, and very much about the selfishness that can drive you towards bad decisions. It's kind of a tragedy. Batman Beyond is very much it's a Batman book. It is a struggle in the shadows. It is a hard and rough life that Terry McGinnis is entering into in Neo Year. Harbinger is, of the 3 of them, the most like Superman, I guess I could say. Like, it's the most hopeful. It's the most directly superheroic. It's the one where the costume is not one that's designed to hide an identity or to subsume pain, but rather one that's designed to inspire, one that's worn because Peter needs to wear it to become the thing he needs to become, not just for himself, but mostly for other people. It's a story about protecting community. It is very much, I think, a story for right now. I think all 3 of these stories, we've, you know, it's always wild because comics production line is like a year long, so you never know if you're still going to be relevant. Harbinger has an interesting distinction insofar as its production was actually closer to 2.5 years because of the pandemic, right? This book was initially designed to come out in 2020. And so looking back at it with very little adjustment, a book that was written in the throes of the Trump administration, that was written in the very depths of that, and was really designed to interrogate what it means to find hope in hopeless places, now I think feels like a wonderful time to interrogate that, because even though it feels like culturally maybe we're all at a little bit less of a sort of culturally anxious place, all that anxiety is still there, and all of that is still living. It's just living a little bit more under the surface, the same way that Peter's anxiety does. And so now we get to interrogate that in a new way. That's a long-winded answer, but effectively that is to say, I think they all have something very core in common.
I want to take the little higher view though, because there's something that Harbinger actually brings to the table that the others really don't, and that it's a rock and roll guitar solo. Like our other books, as you said, like Batman, oh man, it's hard to be Batman. And Kang, I mean, Kang is a villain. Peter has done things that he regrets, but now he's trying to do what's right. He's trying to turn the tables, and he's trying to be the kind of hero that he's always meant to be. And then we have Robbie and Rico stepping in with this art. Our touch point has always been, we want this to be punk rock Akira, right? We want this to be, we were like, Robbie, Rico, we want this to be fast, kinetic, impactful, and fun. And that's what we got. The book really, it slows down at some points, right? Obviously, sometimes you got to tap the brakes in order to appreciate the speed of when you fucking, I'm swearing now. When you put your foot on the gas and you go super fast and you just absolutely rock and roll. And that's the thing that I think is really exciting for us. We like to interrogate tragedy and the weight of responsibility. And this book absolutely does that. But it also does it while bringing in some of that energy that we originally really keyed into with like Joyride, where you got to bring that pop punk sensibility. Like this, we make playlists for everything. And this playlist has so much dope music. Like this is the kind of banger set that you would absolutely hear at a festival. And you'd just be like, I'm camping out at this stage because this music all rocks. And that I think is really cool because I think 20 minutes ago, you asked us a question about work in all these kind of different books and work on the different vibes of all the books. Harbinger is our chance to kind of shake it up and dance a little bit. Harbinger, you write standing up because your booty got to shake while you are writing this effectively hope punk book with this kind of tragic character at the center of it who's gonna goddamn do his best to be better than he was before.
That is a smooth transition into reminding everyone who's watching live that At Home Comic-Con is, of course, encouraging donations to Project Hope, which is a nonprofit organization that helps with healthcare efforts around the globe. If you do donate during this panel, you are automatically in the running to win a super rare Ninjak #1 cover. It's called the Prismaglass cover, features artwork by Javier Pulido, so please be sure to donate if you're able to, and you will automatically be in the running to win that very rare cover. But you guys talked, of course, about the playlist that you have when writing. So can you give us a taste of what are some of the songs that really speak to you when writing The Harbinger? And maybe that way when people read it, on sale October 27th. Sorry, I work for Valiant. I have to say it. That way, when they're reading it, they can listen to some of those songs as well and really get the fully immersive Harbinger experience.
Sure. Well, look, if fans want to listen to any of our playlists, I hold them all on my Spotify account. So you can follow me on Spotify. You'll effectively be following the Hive Mind. And there's a lot of weird playlists there that have weird names. Don't worry about any of those. They're just my personal playlist. But if you see one that's named after one of our projects, and I tend to share them on Twitter as well, then you'll find them. The Harbinger playlist is, and Colin and I have those playlists even before the project is announced. We do them under code names. So if you ever want to just like peek behind the curtain and get the vibe of a thing before we've announced what it is, that's a really great way to do it. And guess what we're writing next? Because sometimes you can. The Harbinger playlist has a whole bunch of different stuff on it, but Colin's right. It's very much a festival playlist. It opens with one of my favorite Radiohead songs, which is called Videotape, which is a song that when Radiohead plays it live, they play this like they used to anyway, play this like a very big full band, like crazy loud version of the song. And when they finally recorded it, it was it's a very chill, like almost solo piano piece that builds really solemnly. In both cases, the first line is, "When I'm at the pearly gates, this will be on my videotape," which I think really speaks fundamentally as like a mission statement to Peter's mindset moving into the book, which is that for the first time in his life, Peter Stanchik is thinking about legacy. He's thinking about what he's leaving behind. He's thinking about, rather than just fucking up the system. See, I did the swearing now too. Rather than smashing everything all the time, he's trying to figure out what it means to bear some responsibility for what comes after the smashing. And he's never going to stop being a punk. Like, that's just kind of who he is, and that's where he was raised. And he always is going to have this anti-authoritarian streak and this sort of chaos streak in him. I think that's just who Peter is, and that's what's going to give him strength as a leader. But Videotape is a big, strong one for that. And then there's 2 or 3 songs by one band, which happens occasionally when you find a band that just like really hits. For Harbinger, that band is called Idols. They're a British sort of post-punk band. They IDLES, all caps. They are incredible. They have an album called Joy is an Act of Resistance that is, I think, about as good a Harbinger album, if you were just to go for after an album, as there is. And I can tell you now, as a sort of like tease for where we're going, while Act 1 of our book, our first 4 issues, is called Be Better, our Act 2 is named after that album and is called Life as an Act of Resistance, which will be the name of the second volume of Harbinger.
And Idols is amazing. If you ever get a chance to see him, absolutely do it. Before the world fell apart, Jack and I went to this show of theirs in this it was a venue that was too small for their sound. And man alive, I have not danced. It's a both mosh pit and dance floor. Oh man, I'm just remembering that concert now. And
it was awesome.
Man, I miss getting sweaty in the middle of a dance floor.
I know. Colin and I are both like big live music kids, and the last couple of years has been rough. I just went to my first concert in like 2 years, and it was a religious experience. Yeah, it was really lovely.
Do you guys remember the first concert that you ever went to? Not that that's why people are watching right now.
Yes.
I'm curious.
My mom took me to a bunch of shows when I was young, and a bunch of them I'm too small to remember. Like, you know, she took me to like a Raffi show when I was like a little kid. But the first like adult rock concert that I can remember was we went to see REM on the tour they did for their album Monster. And there was this really tall dude and his boyfriend next to me, and they could see that I was really small, and it was an amphitheater, so I couldn't see the stage, and I loved REM. So as like a little tiny kid, these 2 strangers just like put me up on their shoulders and like danced around the whole show so I could see everything. And I owe those 2 dudes forever. Love you guys. Thank you for that. That was a wonderful experience.
My mom took me to a Paul Simon concert. And to this day, I absolutely love Paul Simon. I can sing pretty much every single song in his discography. And even though he was a little bit of an older man at the time, that man could boogie. So I'm very much about it.
Pretty sure mine was a James Taylor concert with my parents. I don't recommend that for the Harbinger playlist, but
Act 3, Peter's just hanging out on beaches. It's all Jimmy Buffett, James Taylor. Yeah, I'm into it.
Oh man. So we spoke a bit about why the Harbinger will be accessible for people who haven't stepped into the Valiant universe before, what can appeal to them about the book. But for the Valiant fans who are tuning in right now, Peter, obviously, you guys spoke about legacy. You know, the character's been around for a long time. And of course, there's been so many fan favorite stories featuring the character. So can you guys speak a bit about your experience as, you know, as fans who have followed Peter's adventures and kind of the responsibility that brings, where you're continuing this character's path and just, I guess what I'm trying to say is, what do you want to tell the Valiant fans out there about, you know, the legacy of this character, the continuity behind him, and how you guys are approaching it?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Because I think a lot of people perhaps were a little trepidatious when they heard like new #1, new Harbinger, that we were going to be like pushing aside all that's come before and kind of giving you like a new start, new #1. Hey, we're cleaning the table. And in a sense, we are. Anyone who has picked up the first few issues or the first the preview pages will know that on the very first page, we're exploring a Peter Stanchek who doesn't remember who he is. So much like the new Valiant fan, Peter will be discovering his past, even as a new fan might be discovering who Peter Stanchek and what Peter Stanchek done. But for the Valiant fans, you're going to immediately realize that this is the continuation of Peter Stanchek's story. This is the world of Valiant. This is what we know. This is about 6-8 months after Toyo Harada has been taken off the board. The Harbinger Foundation has effectively completely collapsed. And in that way, all the psiots, both the activated and the unactivated, the potentials, everyone kind of around the globe, and specifically looking at the city of Chicago, are suddenly left without any kind of protection, any kind of oversight, while at the same time being in a world that is looking and suffering from the aftermath of Harada's global ambitions. So at no point has anti-Psiot sentiment been higher at the same time that they have had less representation or protection.
And I think that really, looking at that as a grounding place, and this is really why we got excited to come on board, is because Josh Dysart, first off, because Josh Dysart's story had fundamentally wrapped, and like Joshua is an idol of ours. I really respect him as a writer. I really respect him as sort of a political mind. I really respect him as somebody who tries to do really earnest, actual political, social work in comics. And Harbinger can't be, it can never go back from being that, I think, because of what Josh has infused into that universe and into that character. But what he had done was he had really wrapped his Toy Harada saga, and in doing so, with Imperium, which, by the way, if you haven't read, if you're a new Valiant fan or whatever, and you just want to get blown the hell away, go read Imperium. I know it has a bunch of backstory, but it's truly excellent comics. The thing about all of that entire run that Josh did was he kept promising a Peter Stanchik who would someday be a great person. There's a lot of indications down the line, glimpses of the future in Book of Death, glimpses of the future throughout the book, glimpses of the future throughout the Valiant universe that show us a Peter Stanchik who is a leader of people, who is a powerful but compassionate individual, somebody who's gotten over his drug addictions, or is at least managing his drug addictions, and has managed his mental health, and has found his way to a real balance in himself. But that's a constant promise that is never fulfilled so far within the Valiant universe. And that's because once you start to fulfill that, I think the danger, what you'd be told at Marvel or DC is, well, then you're starting to tell the last story the character can ever tell. Don't ever tell the last story. We ran into this on Green Arrow a lot, where we wanted to fundamentally change the balance of Green Arrow, and we were told a lot like, yeah, but then you're telling the last Green Arrow story. And we don't really think that's true. We just think you're telling the evolution of that character and moving them into a new phase. And with Harbinger, we think that's fundamentally true, because there's no way that Peter Stanchik goes from being, I grew a beard and long hair and went to float around Jupiter because I couldn't handle being around anyone at all, to being the person who saves the world, right? That arc can't happen quickly. That arc has to be done methodically. That arc has to be done with care. And that arc has to not forget all the horrible shit that Peter has done. Peter Stanchik took his best friend's mind, and I mean, let's not make bones about it. He effectively raped her. He is not a good dude in a lot of ways. And then he has gone through a long period of trying to reconcile with his teenage years, reconcile with the loss of his best friend Joe, reconcile with the betrayal by Harada, reconcile with the people that the Psiots he brought into the world, some of whom died. This is not a guy who is entering this story with a lack of baggage. And in coming in on that character, even if we are going to wipe his mind and give him a shot at being better, it's really, really important that we recognize that he did all these things, and that to get to the other side of this, he has to fundamentally reckon with what that means. He has to earn is always a weird word when used in terms of redemption, because earned from who and earned how, right? But I think he really has to at least earn from himself and from the people around him a forgiveness that allows him to move forward. And that is a big fundamental part of our book. And that's something that we can tell new fans what he did a little bit, and we can reckon with that, which we do. But if you're an old Valiant fan, if you're a Valiant fan who's been in this ride since the beginning, this is the necessary reckoning for this character. And it's, I think, the first time it's happened. And I think it's the only time it really can, because once we've done this reckoning, we've done it. And we've moved this character to a new space. And I think by the end of issue 4, you're going to see that that is exactly what has happened to Peter. Of Colin's like, this is a really fun book. And I'm like, this is a slug through the mind of a psychopath. And it's like, weirdly enough, the Harbinger is both.
Oh, y'all, everyone gets to peek behind the curtain, because this is exactly what the writing process is. And then eventually, rather than, effectively, we'll scream at each other for 2-3 hours. It's optimism. It's pessimism. It's a story of the future. The future is ruined. It is the story. It is both. It's both. Oh,
it's both.
It's both. Okay, cool.
So speaking of it, having both of those messages, obviously, when it comes to handling of the story, handling all of that continuity that comes with the character, while also making it accessible for people who may want to check out Harbinger for the first time, that's got to be a very delicate line to really tiptoe. Can you maybe provide some insight onto the origin story behind this book?
That one is, it's a fun story. We were at New York Comic Con, and which we, go to every year that there's not a global pandemic. And we'd actually come to New York with a plan. And now that plan's come to some fruition, I guess I can reveal it. So we'd come to New York because we had not really been invited back to DC after Green Arrow to get involved in all this 5G stuff. That was all kind of happening, and we sort of didn't really know when we were going to be back in the fold at DC. And so we really needed to diversify and push and maybe find our way into the companies that we'd wanted to, but hadn't had a chance to yet. So as we were prepping some creator-owned stuff that's coming to fruition in the next year or so, we went to New York really to get meetings with folks at Valiant and folks at Marvel. And over that weekend, we met for the first time Alana Smith, our editor at Marvel, who was the one who has made Kang the Conqueror happen and our next book. And she's just incredible. And was kind enough to just meet us for coffee and talk to us about Avengers. But we had 2 different meetings over that weekend with Valiant editors. And we were coming from one with Lisa Hawkins, who is our editor on the Harbinger now, and who we're talking to about a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, just a wonderful and storied and excellent editor. And we all had a thing that we were really excited about that we were kind of working on that may someday happen. And we came back, and we're back at the Valiant booth, and I happened to see Heather Antos there. And I hadn't really made a plan to meet with Heather. I just had known Heather from a while back. She was a fan of Joyride. We'd always been looking to maybe work together on something. And so I'd loved her work on the Star Wars books at Marvel. So I was always just let's find a thing to do.
Fan first, connection second.
Very much. And we happened to come by the booth, and we were like, hey, Heather. And she was like, hey, guys, were you talking to Lisa about books? I was like, yeah. We're just trying to find a place in. We're looking at this. She was like, do you guys want to talk about Harbinger? And we were we're in the middle of the con floor, and we're like, yeah, sure. Yeah. She's like, great. Come back in a couple hours. Let's sit down. I was like, oh, okay. And so we walked the floor for a couple of hours, and we're like, oh, that's interesting. And then we sit down, and we're like, you'd really have to do a lot with Peter Stanchik to make Harbinger workable for us. Because it's hard to write that character for us unless you're really reckoning with what he's done. And because I love the book, but that's always been the thing.
And we're like, obviously you're at one of the most amazing conventions in the country, in the world, surrounded by the most amazing stories and cosplay and products. And meanwhile, we're just wandering around being like, what'd you do with Peter Stanchik? I mean, how could you even, Peter, the legacy, Jim Shooter. How would you even pick that up? It's like, oh, that couldn't be for, well, maybe it is for, no, it couldn't be for, and it's like, you dorks are missing the entire con because we're like, well, I don't want,
that's the risk that comes with the job, right? Yeah. And so then we sit back down, and Heather goes, so Harbinger, and we're like, yeah. And she's like, I really feel like we need to reckon with what Peter Stanchik has done. We're like, we agree. And she was like, what? And Heather goes, what if? And then says some stuff that we can't say because it is still fundamentally core to the book. Heather has this one what if that's like, oh, yeah, that's the pitch. And then she was like, cool. So that vibes for you guys? We were like, absolutely, that vibes for you guys. And she was like, great. Can you tell me what it actually means? Like, because right now we just have one sentence. I don't know what that necessarily means. Can you figure that out? We're going to figure it out. And we're like, okay. And so we literally left the con and went to dinner at this like seafood joint on a pier in Lower Manhattan. And and set up
cocktails. Ooh.
Great cocktails, and set up there for like 3.5 hours and drank good cocktails and ate food and like just talked about Peter. And by the end of that meeting, we had the shape of the book, pretty fundamentally what the book has started with and what the book became. And we pitched it to Heather the next day, and then on paper the next week. And then we were going in a couple of weeks from there. And then the book was just rolling from there. And what's funny, the one thing I'll say is, in that origin, a big part of our take had been, well, this book needs to feel very emotionally real and very like physically real. So we're setting it all in Chicago. We're setting it all in these sort of Harbinger Foundation projects that like were set up for psyops, but are now just being used effectively as like a catch-all. I grew up for a long time in Chicago, especially during the closing of Cabrini Green. So some of this was kind of like a reflection of the horrible shit the city did to Cabrini Green. And we we're figuring all this out. And then we're like, so the artist should really be something just like very grounded and very like real and very, character oriented. And one day we just get a call from Heather that's like, so Robbie Rodriguez is doing the book. And we're just enormous fans of Robbie, and it would never in a million years have thought that we'd get to work with him on this. At the time, it was our only superhero book. Like, we were just blown away. But then you look at Robbie's work and you're like, well, there's nothing really grounded about this work. This is why, to Colin's point, this is punk rock Akira. And we start getting the pages and it's like, oh my God, he saved us from ourselves. Because if this book had been the grounded, gritty, sort of realist book that I think we'd been thinking of it as, I think it would have been in some ways indistinguishable from a lot of other superhero books. And I think also insofar as it just would have been a lot of people to, it would have just, I don't think it would have had the same like dynamism. But also, Peter's power set came to life in a way that it's never come to life before. Peter's power set has always been drawn as like, his eye glints, right? He has the sting in the old books. He has this like, every once in a while, maybe he'll float and the rocks around him will float. That is not how Robbie approaches telekinesis, and that's not how Robbie approaches telepathy. Robbie approaches telepathy by filling the space with wild design work and letting Rico go nuts with the color. You can see it on the cover of the Harbinger 1, right? Peter in the Harbinger suit, kind of like not the new Harbinger suit, but the old Harbinger suit, like looking forward and kind of screaming, and there's all that energy around him. Like, that's how we're imagining his powers now. So when he uses his telekinesis, he's not using it to like move rocks. He's using it to twist the top of the Tribune building up into a needle so that he can jump off of it and make more of a run down the streets of Chicago. Like, he's a god level telepath and telekinetic. And that's something that Robbie immediately got and was like, oh, let's see how far we can push that. And so by the time that we were writing issue 2 and 3 and knew that Robbie was involved in this, we were able to just start pushing and pushing, which is our favorite thing to do with an artist, and just pushing until we got to issue 4, which is, I think certainly the most creative work sequentially I think I've ever seen Robbie do. Like, it's just mind-blowing stuff. I cannot wait for people to see it. He left it all on the field.
Yeah.
So you're taking a pre-existing character, Peter Stanchek, putting him in a new location for him, but you're also filling this world with new characters, new supporting characters, new villains. Can you speak a little bit about the process behind creating these characters and what they bring to the story of the Harbinger?
Sure. I'm going to go ahead and start with our supporting cast, because obviously, like, one of the things about Peter is that or any hero really, any person really, is you can know them by the people they surround themselves with. The people who are in your life are the ones who are going to be reflecting the personality traits, the things that really matter to you. So for him, we wanted to build a community of psiots that could kind of gather around him, that he could really be reflected by and start to fall in love with, in that he very rarely has had a community that he needs to protect. And that was really important for us. So within the Psyop community, we have two characters that we really kind of have fallen in love with. The first is Seamstress. She's the person who kind of brings him into the community. Her name is Cece, and she's fucking rad. She's effectively like the coolest friend you could want. She's got this wild punk sensibility. She's super grounded but super fun, and she knows Peter. That's going to be really the key, because when Peter walks in, he's like, "Hi, I'm a stranger. I don't know who I am." She looks at him and says, "Holy shit, this is Peter Stanchak." What?
She knows Peter the way that somebody knows, the way that like you know a celebrity, right? Like she knows Peter the way I know Anya Taylor-Joy, right? Like I like if Anya Taylor-Joy was like, "I don't know who I am," I was like, "Well, I know who you are." Like, I mean, I don't know who you are, but I know who you are.
That's a wild. I was gonna go. Yeah. I was gonna go with like Bono or Sting.
That probably makes more sense. I just watched the Emmys, so I guess Anya Taylor-Joy's on my mind. I apologize.
Cool. But yeah, so we have Cece there, kind of being gobsmacked by by the kind of legend of Peter, and she's gonna be the one who's like, bud, like you can't sleep on the street. Like, I got a couch. Like, come kick it here. We can be a little square. But at the same time, that means that she's going to glimpse not just the Peter on the screen, but the Peter in real life, and start to realize this guy is damaged. And the hero that I thought he was going to be, the powerhouse, is actually just much more of a human person. And that's going to really bond them together in a way that we think is really powerful and really cool. And we're going to have Cece, who is responsible for giving him his badass new suit. So that was kind of like the organic way of us putting him in a costume that is a big step for him, because he's no longer like just a guy plunged into circumstances he can't control. I'm just wearing what I was wearing. It's like, no, dude, he needs to make a conscious choice to put on the suit and go be the hero that the town needs him to be. And that is going to be really important to us. That's where Cece starts. We're going to take her on a whole GD journey.
She's a potential Psyot, so which is something we don't see a lot in the Harbinger books. Generally, it's like it's Psyots who've been activated, right? But she's presents like a normal person, right? She doesn't have Psyot powers. She has the potential for them, but no one to activate them until Peter shows up. And Peter's not activating anybody anytime soon.
And the other person in the community that we really love is this character named Young Ago. Young Ago is our voice of the people at the base level on the street. He's young, he's Black. He has been looking at the Chicago experience basically as two perspectives of kind of being disenfranchised and being marginalized, both because he's African American and because he's a Psyot. So he has very complicated feelings for the police, especially as the police have started to turn their back on Psyot City, effectively looking at it as like, look, this is an unlawful, like, we can't do anything and we don't want to do anything.
Again, big shades of Cabrini Green.
Yeah. And that's kind of the situation that Young Ago is starting to see. He is an activated Psyot. He has the ability to, when he speaks, you listen. He's effectively a human megaphone, and he is using that to let the people know what he thinks. And when he sees Peter Stanchak, he doesn't see like, oh my God, it's Bono, right? He walks in and sees like, oh my God, it's Che Guevara. Like, I have his poster on the wall. This is the leader of the Renegades. This is the guy who rips up society. This is my punk rock folk hero who is here to absolutely burn this place fucking down. Finally, we're going to have some juice to our revolution, and we're going to be able to show the city, show the world what it means to be Psyots.
Unfortunately, Peter has been going through some stuff and might not exactly be that same person. And so that argument between a next generation, for the first time, Peter's the old man in the room. Peter's in his like early to mid 20s. So now he's an old man. And that, I think that change up really allows for a totally different kind of conversation with Peter and makes him reckon with who he used to be. Young Ago is our reflection of what it was to be Renegades. back in sort of the traditional Peter Stanchik sense. But also I think a way to bring some much needed, there's a lot of talk in Harbinger about marginalized community. There's a lot of talk in Harbinger about poverty. There has been, I think, a underrepresentation of like non-white experience in the Harbinger series in general. And that's something that we really hope to continue to engage with and build out into the franchise, because as something that is global and as something that is dealing with how we treat people who are othered in society, it feels really important to us that we engage with the real world ramifications of that as well. Which obviously, like, we're two white guys, like, we understand that to some degree taking that on is us having an enormous amount of hubris. But if we didn't take it on, we really wouldn't be doing service to the core tenets of the book. So we're going to take that risk.
Yeah. But Jack, how about you tell them a little bit about the people on the other side of the world?
Sure. So new villains. As we said, we're really building out a new world for Harbinger. And with Toyo Harada off the field, that really kind of negates a huge part of Peter's sort of rogues gallery, because his rogues gallery is effectively Toyo Harada and people who surround Toyo Harada, like the Bleeding Monk. So without setting him up against another Valiant hero, we wanted to create something that still gave that kind of reflection and allowed Peter to be the bad guy, quote unquote, in a sort of larger cultural context, so that it wasn't as easy for him to like walk in and just be like, I'm a superhero now. And that's where the warning comes from. In Chicago, now that everybody's been pushed into Psyot City, there is a thing, there's sort of a local superhero group called The Warning. The Warning primarily police Psyot areas because the police won't do it. The police will back off and the Warning will do it for them. The Warning are 5 people of mysterious origin. You will learn a lot more about them in issue 3. But they all present with pretty powerful psiotic powers, including the ability to change, remove, and erase minds, which is why Peter starts looking at them pretty immediately. Obviously, as somebody who is trying to understand what has happened to his own mind, it is relatively obvious that the Warning must have something to do with that. And so he starts to really look into that, even as he realizes he needs to go after them to protect the city at large, protect his city, Psyot City. Not Chicago at large, because to the rest of Chicago, the Warning are superheroes. They like show up to conventions and people, they're on the news and they're trusted. People dig the Warning because the Warning make them feel safe from those who feel othered. The Warning have the same kind of celebrity in their circles that the Border Patrol has in their circles. And I think but like that, there were some really bad actors in there. In our case, the Warning are pretty much universally bad actors. And as that begins to push itself, we'll start to understand how they have their powers, why they have their powers, what they are doing with those powers, and what Peter can do about it. But suffice to say, 5 very iconic, weird, new Robbie Rodriguez designs with some very cool, interesting, cosplayable fashion. Where you're going to meet 5 new characters. You're going to meet Lethian. You're going to meet Lethian. You're going to meet Overwatch. You're going to meet Blam. You're going to meet the Badge, and you're going to meet their leader, Futurist. Those 5 enter this story with a sort of with a bang, as it were, or with a blam, and it's going to be a hell of a fight between Peter and them.
Yeah. So that's a lot of first appearances for the debut issue of the Harbinger. But when it comes to
and they're all in issue 1.
which is on sale October 27th and available for pre-order right now at a comic shop near you. I work for Valiant, guys. I have to. Come on. So when it comes to this, you're surrounding, this pre-existing character with this new cast of characters. But for fans who are wondering about maybe some of Peter's former allies, is there anything you can tease about any plans that you may have for the future of the Harbinger?
I have one tease, one very easy, simple tease that I think people will get. When Peter Stanchik, of all people, starts putting on a superhero costume and flying around a city being a superhero, it feels like one of his old friends who herself spends a lot of time flying around in a suit being a superhero and using the word superhero and being a big fan of superheroes, might have something to say about this and might want to get involved and understand this for herself. All of which is to say, I think everybody should keep their eyes to the sky for Faith Herbert, because she is not somebody who is going to sit on the sidelines of this book without pushing her way in for very long.
Eyes to the sky for Faith Herbert. Ooh!
Shout out as always to Jody Hauser, who is one of Colin and I's very best friends. We all met before any of us were writing in comics, and we've had a front row seat to her rise. So we read obviously every issue of Faith. We know the backstories behind all that. We're consulting with Jody even as we move forward. So that's it's a really awesome full circle moment for us too, just as huge fans of Jody and of Faith and of the world she created, to help now bring that back into the book and trying to tie some of that in.
So before we move on to Batman Beyond and Kang, is there anything else you guys would like to say about your upcoming run, The Harbinger, which is available now for pre-order?
Until October 4th. So get on that FOC, guys.
Get on it. I mean, I think we've said a lot, but this book, of all the books that we've done, this is the one that we've been spending the most amount of time with. It's one of the most complicated, because we are telling a story that has a very, let's say, elaborate and innovative storytelling structure. We can't do anything easy. Sorry, fans of ours. So even this is going to be really exploring kind of new and innovative ways to tell this story, especially because Peter's perception of things. I mean, as Jack points out, he is a god-level talent, a god-level power. So that means that he starts to explore things and think about things in ways that are really unique to him. But at the same time, getting the chance to crack open and create an entirely new world of characters is something we've never had the opportunity before. And I guarantee you, we've gone insane. Like, this book is kinetic, it's beautiful, it's rock and roll, it's fun. And the important thing is, for us, fun comes with responsibility. Fun is not just kicking back and hopping on your dirt bike. I just want to drink some beers and hop on your dirt bike.
It's time for your weird metaphors. I like this. This is good. We both get a weird comp.
But it's about kind of like fun with responsibility. And I think that's going to be really the thing that we're really excited about. And I really hope that fans really key into it, because it's what we want as Valiant fans. And hopefully it's what you want to.
I think just to addendum that really, really quickly, because it's exactly on point. The Valiant universe has always been really distinction. Like, it's one of its big distinctions is that it absolutely feels like our universe. It feels like the universe that would happen if you and I walked outside our house today. The Valiant universe feels like the thing that could technically exist. It would probably be way, way, way deep in the background of our world, and you would have to kind of look for it. The heroes of the Valiant universe appear more like conspiracy theories and stuff like that than in a lot of ways than they do like superheroes, or like natural events than they do like superheroes, the way that they do in like the Marvel or DC universe, when you could be walking around and be like, oh, there he is. Oh, there's that superhero. This book is a reflection of our world and of the kinds of energies that have to go into social change. And that doesn't just happen, and personal change. And that doesn't just happen with like grim self-realization or violence or any of that stuff. That, like, social change happens through joy. Social change happens at dance parties. Social change happens in protests. Like, this stuff happens out of a place of joy and out of a place of optimism. So even though we're dealing with very, very heavy stuff, we want to maybe, rather than saying like, oh, we're tamping down the fun, like we are sort of tamping down the fun with responsibility, but we're also, I think, really tamping up the responsibility with fun, right? That those two things are what you need to do hand in hand to make the world work. Otherwise, you're running yourself into a grim world.
Though before we jump off Harbinger, Greg, you recently showed us like this wild cover, this metal, badass metal Harbinger 1 cover.
You're making comics out of metal. I don't get it. I don't understand.
Yeah. And I just want to like, if just as a fan, you know, I think a lot of Valiant fans are also kind of collectors of rare and interesting covers. How do I get one? And B, how do they?
Excellent question, and thank you for bringing that up. First of all, as the co-writers of the book, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys are going to get one anyway.
Yes.
You're getting one. We'll talk about it. But
Jack,
yes, I'm sorry.
Jack, will you sign it for me?
Yeah. Will you sign mine?
No.
Can you? Oh. If you give us 2, we can sword fight with them.
There you go. But yes, Valiant, even dating back from the 90s, has always done these special kind of variants to celebrate new launches. Chromium covers, all of these different kinds of textures and materials have gone into them. And they've had fun with them over the years. Even like with Quantum and Woody, there's been like the most variant cover ever. Where it just had all of these different kinds of materials. I could take no credit for that, but you know, they clearly have a lot of fun with these. And the director of design and production at our company, Travis, he takes a lot of time really thinking about each book and how he can celebrate each new launch with a special, super limited variant for the first issue. And in the event of the Harbinger, he took Robbie Rodriguez's eye-catching cover. He made some edits to it. I cannot elaborate on the reasoning for that, but he made some really cool edits that are going to stand out. And then he played around with the colors, and half of it is metal, and then half that's not metal. You have the Harbinger logo, and the font is in metal. And this is a 1 in 250 variant, which means any retailer that orders 250 copies of the Harbinger, they are going to receive one of these metal variants, which they can then in turn sell to their diehard Valiant fan, who will obviously give that variant in a very nice home and take excellent care of it, or just read it and sword fight with it, like you guys said, whichever works.
We have no idea how to read. What CCG grading? Never met.
So if you are interested in one of these really cool metal variants, I would highly recommend contacting your local comic shop about their plans for the Harbinger #1. Mention you heard the metal variant, and they can give you more information about that. Once again, the Harbinger #1 is on sale October 27th. You can pre-order now in your local comic shop or through any digital distribution method. And the pre-order deadline ends October 4th. So if you are interested in supporting the book, you really want to guarantee you get a copy. It would mean a lot to us if you pre-order before the deadline of October 4th. Please and thank you. And speaking of things that we could say thank you for, At Home Comic Con is, of course, doing a fundraiser to help Project Hope, which is an organization that assists with healthcare efforts around the globe. If you do donate during this panel, which you could do so, there should be a donation link pinned in the live chat below, as well as on the stream description. So go ahead and make a donation if you are able to. Thank you. And that will automatically put you in the running to win one of these kinds of special variants that we just spoke about. It's actually the most recent one that was for our Ninjak launch with Jeff Parker and Javier Polito. That is a Prisma glass variant. It's kind of like a plexiglass cover, and Travis had a lot of fun with day glow inks to make sure that it really pops. It's a pretty cool cover. So if you do donate, you are automatically in the running to win one of these very rare Ninja covers.
By the way, if you aren't reading the current Parker Polito Ninjak run, everybody out there, like, get on it. It's so weird and cool, and like, it's unlike, I mean, I know you say this a lot, but like, I genuinely believe this. Like, it is unlike anything else in comics. Like, I don't know what else I would compare it to, like Queen and Country, but like, it's not. Like, it's so much weirder. It's great. Just, it's like, what if Queen and Country was Batman? It's incredible. Go read Ninjak. It's so good.
And the first 3 issues are on sale now. So while you are at your local comic shop, hopefully they will be able to provide that. And I believe the trade paperback, if you did miss out on, following along, I believe it's either December or January. But definitely talk to your local comic shop about if you are trade waiting, to make sure you order the trade paperback for that book. So let us now move on to the big two and your work that you guys are doing with them. First and foremost, Batman Beyond. You guys watched the show.
Yeah.
Now you're writing Terry McGinnis. And not only that, but also the death of Bruce Wayne. What?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. What was that like for you guys?
Crazy. I mean, the craziest part is pitching it and them not immediately laughing in our faces and walking away, right? Because what happened was Dave Wielgos, who is an editor that we've worked with before. We've worked with on everything we've done at DC effectively. He's either been like the associate editor or the assistant editor. He sort of came up with us. And this is the first, and he used to run the anthologies. So he would come at us, whenever there was an anthology and be like, do 8 pages of this weird character, do 8 pages of Crime Syndicate, do 8 pages of, and he would always just be like, have some fun. So we all knew that we always had like ideas that meshed up. But then he came to us after a long period of us not doing a lot of work at DC. He came to us just being like, look, I've got one 30-page Batman Beyond story in Batman Urban Legends #7. I really want you guys to do it. I think you guys would kick ass at Batman Beyond. He's correct. We really want to do that, and we think we'd do a good job. You'll be surrounded by other great futuristic Batman stories. There's an amazing Batman 1,000,000 story. There's like going to be an amazing Batman 666 story. So, great Kath Kane story. It was like but you're going to anchor this. So 30 pages of Batman Beyond. And we sit down, and rather than doing like we have as Colin said, like we don't like doing easy. So when it was like, great, let's just do like a 30-page one-shot of Batman Beyond. Instead, we were like, how do we fundamentally change Batman Beyond and turn it and give it new life? How do we do what we did on Harbinger and what we're trying to do on Kang? How do we do that to Batman Beyond? What hubris to think that was the assignment, right? That was not the assignment. The assignment was write 30 pages of Batman Beyond. But we were like, well, I don't know that there's 30 pages of Batman Beyond that are worth writing anymore beyond like just doing the old show. Not that that's bad. It's just not what we do. We have a really hard time just doing the assignment.
And especially the assignment has been done so well before. Like, oh yeah, exactly. Like Bruce Timm, like get wrecked. We're going to like, no. Like
right, exactly. Well, we go back with Kyle Higgins. Like it's just like great people have played in this pool. Dan Jurgens just played in this pool about as hard as you could. Like I don't know that we have anything to do in this scenario. So why don't we just completely change it by doing the thing that they've done a couple of times in the comics, but have never, I think, fundamentally committed to, which is move Terry into the next chapter of his life. Same thing we're trying to do with Kang. Same thing we're trying to do with Harbinger. Take Terry, who's been in one status quo for a very, very long time. He's been the trainee Batman with Batman in his ear. And force him instead to go through the experience of having to make those decisions on his own. Make those decisions as Batman. Really lean on what Terry's experience of becoming Batman is like rather than Bruce's experience. Because Bruce wasn't trained in his ear. So if Terry's going to earn this mantle, he's going to have to stand on his own for a while. And so that is how we came to the first page of Batman Beyond Wake, which is the story in Urban Legends 7, which came out a few weeks ago, which is Bruce Wayne lying in the Batcave with his pacemaker having exploded because somebody has hacked into the cave, hacked into his pacemaker, and blown up Bruce Wayne's heart. And he is dying. And he's got a minute to live before he finally lets himself go, and he's got this one last lesson to teach Terry. And then we're following Terry in the present. That's all happening in flashback. And now we're following Terry later that night after Bruce has passed, and Terry has one night to solve his murder and figure out who could have done this. And once we figured out who it was, that became a book. It was really clear that was like, that could be a new status quo. It doesn't need to be. We end it. It's fine, but it could be a new status quo, which is why as soon as we turned in the outline, rather than getting a ha, no, go away forever, which I think we kind of expected, we instead got a call from Dave saying, so, hey, are you guys free to do 6 more issues of Batman Beyond? Let's embrace this. Let's go. And we've just been riding a high ever since.
Yeah, and I think one of the oh man, I just totally spaced on what I was going to, oh right, as Jack leaves, I totally spaced on what I was going to say. He's the other part of my brain cell, you see. No, the cool thing for us walking in was like, yeah, taking him effectively. We were like, look, what Terry's never had is a year one. We wanted to really strip him of everything, and we wanted to see what happens to, to him when he doesn't have that safety net. And that's where the title Neo Year came from. We wanted to strip all that away, take him from, where he is, and fans will see that as we move into the actual series. Without Bruce there, without the, he doesn't have all of the toys. Maybe the Batcave doesn't have all the stuff in it anymore, but spoilers, go read the issue. But the point is going to be really like Terry's running out of rocket fuel. Terry has limited batarangs. He is not an engineer. He is not a fabricator. He doesn't have like this limitless arsenal to kind of start filling his, to refill. So as he's going through this adventure, which is going to put him through his paces, we are stripping that away and really taking away all of his, all of the kind of support systems and supporting technology that becomes so that he's learned to rely on as Batman. Because at the end of the day, Batman's not a set of tools. Batman's not a utility belt. Batman is a state of mind. Batman is a determination. And that is what we wanted to bring to this character in a way that, especially when he has that safety net, he can kind of be like gothy Spider-Man. He's full of quibs. He's kind of full of fun. And that's definitely the book that DC thought we were going to give them. We even had other people being like, oh, you guys are going to make the most fun Batman Beyond. It's going to be so bitchin'. And it's like, look, it is going to be bitchin' and it is going to be fun. But being Batman isn't bitchin'. Like being Batman is hard. And it's sad and it's tragic. And that's the kind of weight that we wanted to bring to Terry's story, really infuse it with the kind of neo-noir detective element, because that at its core is what Batman is. I think every single
everything at its core is what Batman is. But that's the year one tone, right? We're not doing a take on year one. We're not really like, I think almost all of our year one references exist entirely in Wake. There are several in Wake to sort of, I think, thesis out what we're doing. But once we get into Neo Year, it's not Bruce's story anymore. Bruce does not appear. Like the only way that Bruce is present in Neo Year is that, like year one, Neo Year is told through Terry's journals, and Terry's journals are written to Bruce. So though Bruce is gone, Terry is still processing his information as a conversation and processing his journey as a conversation with his mentor, because that's just how he's been taught to be Batman, and figuring out what that means to him and how that becomes an ongoing Batman sort of coping mechanism for him is like a big part of what we're doing in Neo Year. That, and also, like we said, like we did in Harbinger, introducing new supporting cast, introducing new villains. In Wake, Terry evacuates Gotham of everybody he cares about for reasons that are apparent if you read the story. For Terry to operate at all in Gotham, he needs to have no one he cares about. So it's really important that his brother is gone, that his mom is out of town, that his
that Dana is
out of town, that all of his support system are no longer there for their safety and for his. But obviously that creates a very lonely and isolated person. And so new people are going to start to come into Terry's life. The only returning character from the series who we're really spending a lot of time with, other than obviously the Jokers, who are always going to be around Gotham and are always going to be a nuisance. And whenever you want to have fun, you just put Terry up against Jokers. But our core supporting lead is Barbara Gordon, who we're really trying to embrace telling a story about her as well, and really looking at what she means and who she is, because she's never going to abandon Gotham. But that doesn't mean that she can do this forever. And I think that's, and so she gets to be our Bruce Wayne to some degree, insofar as not because she's in his ear at all, but because she gets to embrace we get to embrace that sense of aging and that sense of moving beyond yourself, and what that means for her.
A hero at the beginning of their journey and a hero at the end of it.
And several new villains and allies, sort of in and around that book.
And I want to just make any fans of Batman Beyond, I want to make you a promise. As long as we are writing the story, we will never bring back Bruce Wayne.
Nope.
Bruce Wayne is dead. He's not a clone. There's not a life model decoy. He's gone.
The villain won't turn out to be Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne is it's fundamental that the book has to move beyond Bruce Wayne. Like it's Batman Beyond, and and like in our context, Beyond is after Bruce, because we really need Terry to understand a different world and to become his own Batman. I think it's key for his evolution as a character and for his staying power as a character, because we want people to be reading Batman Beyond books and watching Batman Beyond movies, and ideally having like Batman Beyond shows and all that kind of stuff. Like we want them to be able to be doing that when we are old, right? We want to see kids learning this character and finding what they found or what we found when we were their age. So the character can't remain stagnant forever to do that. The character needs to, like Nightwing before him, evolve and change and become a more self-sustaining character.
So we have about 10 minutes left for the panel, and I have two very important questions to ask you before we wrap. The first one is, you guys talked about, being a fan of all these properties and how that more than likely plays a role when you're, working on the scripts. Like with the Harbinger, you're obviously thinking about all the creators that have contributed so much to this property over the years. With Kang, obviously so much history there. Batman Beyond, I have to wonder, when you're writing it, especially for urban legends, since it did feature a lot of dialogue from Bruce Wayne, are you hearing Will and Kevin's voices in your head while writing it? What's that like?
It's great. I don't know how to answer it. It's awesome. Like,
I mean, Kevin Conroy's voice is Batman's voice.
It is Batman's voice.
Like,
no matter what you're doing.
I love Val Kilmer. Christian Bale's great, but Kevin Conroy is Batman. Like, undoubt, full stop. So like that's who's going on in our head, and actually it's very useful because he does exist as a voice. It's easy to kind of key in and find that target. Like, it sucks that we kill him immediately. I would write Kevin Conroy's Batman for 1,000 years, but he had to go. And then Freddie's voice is absolutely also in our head, because like that's the character. And if you start to lose that, you're gonna lose Terry. Terry is going through a new phase in his life, but he's still that kind of bratty punk, like anger issues kid that he's always been. He's just growing up.
But I mean, I think that's also just a larger statement about like writing. I think you always have to find the voice of the character. Like, that sounds obvious. Like, of course you have to find the voice of the character, but you have to find the actual, like, for me, I cast the characters in my head. The characters have voices from a really early time, especially on creator owns. It's actually really important to cast the characters, to like talk about like, are we writing this for Jude Law? Are we writing this for,
Steve Buscemi?
Right. Are we writing this for Tessa Thompson? Like, who are we writing this for? Because you kind of can find your way, especially when you're in a writing team, you can find your way to a mutual voice that way. For something like Batman Beyond, obviously it's easier because there is such a fundamental voice. Kang is really interesting because we were writing Kang well before Jonathan Majors debuted as Kang. So we couldn't take Jonathan Majors' voice. We didn't know what his voice was going to be. We knew Jonathan Majors, but I didn't know what he was going to do with the character. And obviously now that we've seen the first glimpses of what he's going to do with this character with He Who Remains, it seems relatively clear that he's doing something interesting and innovative with the character. So instead of writing to like an individual actor's voice, that was the first time where it was like, what if we wrote this character like he is written in the 60s? Like, write this character like Stan Lee wrote him, which is to say he is bombastic and he uses too many words and he is in love with his own voice, but he's also, and he's always trying to be profound. And oftentimes he's going to get there and sometimes he's not, and he's just going to be really self-indulgent. And that makes for a book that has that voice. And fortunately, that's just me. So Kang, I
was gonna say it's Shakespeare, but yeah, it's just you, bud.
Sure, it's just me. I'm Shakespeare. I am the Shakespeare. No, I just try too hard to be profound and often fail. But I think that it's right. You're kind of writing him. You're like, what's the floweriest, Shakespeareest version of Nate Richards, of like 18-year-old trying to do good science nerd boy.
This coffee, it's hot breath of life. Truly, I shall consume it, and it will fill my body with the nourishment and energy I will need to step forth into the day, seizing it and drinking its juices. For I call it. You get it. You guys.
Like, that is exactly right. And the trick is trying to do that in a book that isn't funny. Like try to do a book, try to do that, but make it tragedy. And like that can be like, oh shit, you have to be Shakespeare, which we're not. But you know, we try to find our own way there.
This cup of coffee is empty, truly like my heart. It is unable to. Goofball.
Colin, Jackson, thank you so much, guys, for taking time today to hop on At Home Comic Con. Talk about, of course, your work for The Harbinger, which debuts October 27th. Pre-orders are available until October 4th, as well as your work on Batman Beyond Neo Year, Batman Urban Legends #7, which was your debut with Batman Beyond, and of course, Kang the Conqueror, which the first 2 issues are on sale now. But thank you so much, everyone who is watching and who has donated. And we have, in fact, picked a winner. And the lucky winner of the Ninjak #1 Prismaglass variant is S.J. Nichols. S.J. Nichols, congratulations. So in order to claim your prize, please DM At Home Comic Con on Twitter. And if you're not on Twitter, send an email to them at athomecomicon@gmail.com. Please be sure to reach out at your earliest convenience, just so they can set that up and pass along the info to Valiant, and then we will happily mail you the prize. Thank you very much for doing that. The next panel is going to be Elseworlds Exchange, and you know what? You guys should watch that, because that is going to be co-hosted by Sal, Comic Pop, and Joel from Cape Joel. Both are very cool guys who have a real love and passion for talking about comics. You should definitely check that out. Apparently the discussion is on the best Superman suits. So sure to be a lot of debate there.
Superman lives. Superman lives. Easy. Superman lives. Nicolas Cage in shiny blue. Can't beat it.
Okay, that's the end of the panel. Let's go. Let's get out of here.
So be sure to tune in at 1 p.m. Eastern to watch that. Once again, thank you so much, Colin. Thank you so much, Jackson, for taking the time to talk about The Harbinger and everything else. And thank you to everyone else who watched the panel and took time to just enjoy the chat and donate if possible. Take care, everyone, and thank you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you.